Welcome back to the No Boring Stories podcast. It is so good to have you here. And I'm joined today by somebody who truly, really deeply understands a not boring story and how to get a not boring story out quickly, effectively. I am so excited to have you here, Brenna. Brenna McGowan, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this interview. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, we've chatted before a little bit. We did an IG live, and it was so easy. We're like, oh, we gotta keep this conversation going somehow. Let's dive in more and dig in and bring more gold to the audience. So what I want to get into today is, of course, storytelling and copywriting. You are the copywriting queen, an absolute genius in this field, and how you're helping people is phenomenal. So I want to get into that a little bit. I also want to hear your story, obviously, how you got into that. Why do you even care? Why copywriting, and how is that helpful, and why does it matter? But I want to start with something you told me. I ask all my people ahead of time, like, tell me your favorite stories. And often it's like a book or a movie or something. And occasionally somebody will be like, oh, there's this really personal story that I love. And you're one of those people. So you told me this story of your dad and your Nana, or opening Christmas presents. I don't want to spoil it. What is this story? Bring us in.
Yes. So my father, I feel like I got all of my storytelling abilities from him. And my dad's one of those people that just like lights up in a room. And he's 6'7", so he stands out in a room too, because he's so tall. So
you better be smiling.
Yeah. So my dad was an only child, and my Nana, God bless her, she was just naive, I think is the best word. She always wanted to have lots of children. She had several miscarriages. She had my dad, and my dad gave her a run for her money. And so my dad always tells a story about at Christmas time, now my Nana worked. So this is what my dad was in the early 60s. So my dad, even as a young kid, would be home by himself, and they'd wrap up all the presents. So my dad, even as a young boy, he'd unwrap all of his Christmas presents that were under the tree, play with them. The one that I remember, if my memory is correct, like a train set, like he'd get it all set up, have everything, play with it. And then he would put everything back together, repackage it so it would look like it was never touched, and throw it back under the tree. So it always makes me laugh.
When did she find out?
Oh, she never found. I think it was when he was like an adult. And
yeah, right.
And yeah, he would tell her these things, like he would do. Gosh, now that I'm thinking about it, there's another story he did. I mean, he'd play like, not even like tricks on her, but she was so naive and loving and caring that she didn't realize like he was doing all these things as a kid.
I love how you're using those. You're like naive and loving and caring. Like
she was like she's absolutely, an incredible grandmother, but I don't think that like she just didn't think through some of these things.
Sure.
Now I feel like with my kids, I'm always like, all right, like what are they up to?
Yeah,
like, I
right.
can totally
exactly.
tell like
nothing gets by me.
Exactly. Although I'm sure, like we talked about before we started, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that gets by me. But
yeah, sure.
But yeah, he would do all these kind of things to her.
This is the kind of thing. I mean, she's still around?
No. She passed away probably about 15 years ago.
I wonder if that's the kind of thing that like really, I mean, deep down, she's like, I knew everything. Like that's how my mom was. I'm like, I got this by you. She's like, oh, darling, nothing got by me. I saw everything. Like, oh no, where were you? Like how? and she actually has a similar story of doing something like that, of opening Christmas presents, then wrapping them back up. And I just imagine the precision that he had to go through to like not rip the paper. And
My
So
dad
good.
to pull something off, he'll be as precise as he needs to be. Even
Brilliant.
even as an adult, he'll do things to. He's a bit of a jokester. So
Well, okay, well, let's carry that through because maybe that's the same sort of, skill set that you bring into what you do and the precision that it requires to craft words together, to put things together, to really help your clients and your audience really effectively receive a message that's important. So, as a copywriter, tell me like what this is. What do you do?
right. Well, that's a great question. As a copywriter, I help people sell their stuff. I mean, that's my first, the biggest objective is,
Mm,
okay, words, copy in the terms of we use it are words that sell. So how can I craft copy words that sell not only for myself but for my clients? But when we get a little deeper into that, there's different ways of doing this. And for me, it's always been like, how can I take this like the fun side of our lives, the everyday stories is what I call them, and how can we
mm,
use these things that happen to us in a way to connect with our audience and build personal relationship and also strategically sell whatever our offerings are, knowing in the way that we're doing it in a way that is empathetic, and by using our stories we show our clients why they need us. And
yeah.
so that's really always my goal. It's not just to sell people stuff that there is some psychology behind it, and I'm not a master psychologist, but my goal is, okay, how can I show people through examples, metaphors, parallels, things that are going on in their own lives, help them see why what I'm offering or what my client is offering is actually a benefit to them.
Yeah. So is that right? Every metaphor, every simile, every sort of picture, every visual, every story, like literal story is actually telling this story of like, I'm just trying to help you see either the pain or the promise, like it or both. Am I
Right.
right? Like
Or I'm
that's the
trying to
effort through
help
that.
you shift your belief on something, or see
Mm,
see things through a slightly different eye, or show you why your objection to this why you maybe haven't thought about it from all these different angles, and let
yeah.
me help present this to you.
Is that easy for you? Does this come
Uh
easy?
yeah, I would say yes, to a
Yeah.
degree. I think sometimes the puzzle of it all makes my
Mm-hmm.
brain hurt.
Mm,
But literally, I can like be listening to someone and they can be talking, and if I know enough about their business, it's almost like a matching game in the way it works in my mind. Like, how can I start matching all of this research that I do for clients, understanding, like we talked about, what the pain points,
yeah. Yeah.
objections, how can I take that, and then how can I find these stories and start matching them together?
Mm. Okay. Okay. I'm going to invite you into something here. And I don't want to, you can absolutely refuse and we'll keep going. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, we could just edit this question out right here if we want to. If you decide, no, I don't want to do this. Do you want to, can,
If you stumped me,
yeah, I know. I was
yeah.
like, can you do that puzzle piecing together or whatever? Like, do you want to dive in and do that with me, with my business right now to show how this works and kind of creating some copy through that as I understand my client and whatever? Like, is that fun? Would that
Yep.
be
I'm up for the challenge. Although now I'll feel like I came up with a lame story. And then, like 30 minutes when we're done, I'll be driving and I'll be like, shoot, this was a better story. But I think working through the exercise will really help people, even if I'm
yeah.
doing it lamely through this process, because I'm on the spot. I think maybe I'll come up with something genius now. You never know. So
Of course you will. That's what it is. The most inspired workers do it on the spot, or artists, they pick
let's
up the
break
palette. They're
into
like,
my
fine, I'll
craft.
make something. There we go. And then it's a friggin' Michelangelo. So let's okay. I mean, what do you got? Where do you start?
Okay. So tell me the number one reason why people don't buy from you.
Don't buy from me. Um, they feel like they've already done their branding. They've already got their main message. They're pretty far along in the process and are selling something have already found success, or they feel like that I don't have enough of a thing to even, invest that kind of money in doing the long-term story kind of work.
So the latter part of what you said, what do you mean that they don't have a thing? Like
They're like, yeah, no, I know that I want to do life coaching, but I don't know, like, yeah, I don't even know what structure that is. So they think that, they need strategy and sales before doing the deep rooted story work. So they're like, I'm going to go and work that out right now. And I'll come to you later.
so
And
they,
I'm like,
they think
ugh.
they need to do these other things first before they work on their story.
Yeah, I'd say that's a common objection or idea that comes through. Yeah.
Okay, so if you were my client, I would say, okay, let's like start thinking through something in your life where you thought that something needed to come first and then you realized, so now I'm going to put you on the spot. Like
This is great.
what's something in your life where you thought, okay, this is really important, but you kind of missed the boat, that it was really like
Mhm.
a time in your life where you did something similar to what they're doing.
Okay. I love this. I love this work. There's, I would say first thing that came to mind was when I tried to be an actor. So I right after high school, I moved to downtown Toronto and was like, I'm going to be a big time actor. And maybe I thought, okay, I need an agent before I can act. I need to go get an agent. So then I did all this work and it took all this time to try to do whatever I could to get an agent. When then I was like turning down independent films because I was like, no, I need an agent and I got to put my time into getting an agent. Do you know what I mean? So I was like trying to get that and turning down the opportunities to actually act so that I could like find the person who's going to get me these opportunities.
Perfect.
That
Okay.
comes to mind.
Okay, so that's a perfect. So what I would do if you were my client, I would say, okay, I would go through a process where I'd be like, okay, so tell me a story about a time that, you spent all this time trying to get an agent. Like, is there something funny that happened? Is there a
Uh-huh.
story about getting an agent that sticks in your mind?
I I remember going, well, I went for like an open call for I think it was for a Sunny D commercial, maybe. And I remember like it was at some hotel and I had to pay for like, all the bus fare and everything to get out there and then waited in line for a long time. And then you just wait in line and walk up to this table. They ask you your name. They said, say a line. And it was probably like, whoa, Sunny D, your mom's the coolest. Like it was some like classic line. And then I remember they said like, okay, can you lift up your shirt? I was like, "Whoa, okay." So I did because I was like, sure. They're like, okay, yeah, you could probably work on that body a little bit more. Okay, thank you. And I was like, I'm 19, and I am like hot stuff at this point. And then she just like in 2 words just cut me down, and also I felt like kind of violated in all in this desperation for like, I hope that they represent me. I'll do whatever they say. And I know there's been obviously as I say that, I'm laughing through it. That is unfortunately a terribly nasty side of the whole industry. But in that situation, I was like, I don't think I want to do that anymore.
So we just wrote your email. So basically your subject line is the time they made me lift up my shirt. Right? Like everyone is going to open that email. I'm already telling you. And then you tell this story about the time that you walked in and what you just said to me.
Yeah.
And then you figure out a way to segue it over is what I call it,
Yeah.
or use
Yeah.
a transition sentence. And this is really similar to how you're probably
Yeah.
thinking when it comes to stories, that you don't think that storytelling is important. You think the branding is important. You think the fonts are important. You blah, blah, blah. But really what is truly is getting that foundation of your story. The foundation of your story is and then you go into your explanation. So
Yeah.
you,
Oof. I love because even as
we
you say
came
that,
up
I
with a
see.
good one.
Imagine that. There's no boring
Yes.
stories here, Brenna. There's no boring
Right.
stories. Uh, this is because even as you're saying that, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, so this is the magic of like, what's that transition statement? That's where people get hung up. And I would say that's looking at something like, okay, so who was I in that? Well, I was somebody who was confused on the process. I was confused about what I had and what was going on. And then, uh, now I'm coming forward, or even through that, I got to the point where I was like, oh, I should just do the thing that I'm good at. Just take those out. That was as clear as anything. And so, yeah, like once again, I went from confused to clear, and I'm here to help you do the same in your storytelling, in your branding. Like, this is how I can help you. And you, while you're looking out there for all the different answers and options, I'm right here to help you find the clarity that you need.
Boom, transcribe it and send that puppy out.
Gosh, I gotta send that to my assistant.
Oh yeah, you have to tell me what your open rate is on that.
I should hire you. I think maybe that's how that goes.
Yeah, exactly. Hire me to write your emails.
Well, that's kind of magic, isn't it?
Well, and I have a whole guide. At the end, I can tell you too. I have a whole guide that I wrote, or not but I took like some of the top copywriters and I showed like how they do this and how they use segues to, because this isn't as easy for everyone, trying to figure out this, like, these like parallels. And like I said, the matching part of it is, how can I take this like core feeling, emotion, and either come up with a story like we did. That's what I would call like my backward method, where we're figuring out what the main point of our story is, that we want to bring or show people, or something amazing happens or so funny in your life and you're like, where can I use this? Like, how can I find the connection? So I do that a lot too, where like I told this story in my email this week, where my husband, talking about lifting up shirts, he was
oh boy.
I know, I feel like we went down this road the last time we talked, but my husband, he's been working out really hard, and we're in our mid-40s, so things just aren't quite the same as they used to be. And he's been and so he's asking me for like, hey, how am I looking? Am I looking, and I'm looking over at him from my bed and I'm like, yeah, you're looking bulky. And to me, like, bulky is like muscular, right? Like, that's like a super compliment. And that was not, and every time we talk, it's like now like an inside joke, like, do not call your man bulky, people, because it's not a compliment. So I was like, I have to use this story somehow. So it's always around you. It's just figuring out, once you can figure out how to do the connection part, like your gold, you can do social posts, you can go and do videos on this, because people always love when you start with a story. You can do emails. You can use it everywhere once you can kind of figure out this story component.
So for you, even with that, when you think of the bulky thing, I assume like you're like, oh, I got this. It's a post about how important your word choice is.
Exactly.
Like, that's,
well, and not only that, but then I even transitioned. So I did like a super stealth one where it was like, this is why your word choice is so important. This is why using voice of customer. Like, if I would have thought about it for 2 minutes or done a little research, I would have known, hey, honey, you're looking really cut is much better than you're looking bulky, right? So if I would have thought about it for a second, but then I transitioned it to like, but you don't want me sitting here lecturing you about voice of customer. Like, I'm not writing an email about the 3 ways to like use voice of customer to improve your emails. You need to hire me to do it for you. Like, that's where I went. So
right. Yeah. And I think that this is what, we're 20 minutes in. I don't know. And I think that everybody's got, like, anybody listening is seeing the massive value of this, of how much more engaging that is. Let's talk, if it's me telling that story. And to be honest, this is what's so fun about this, is you asked me a story, you took me down a path, which I love to go down with my clients as well. You go down some route and you see that we're tapping into something that they haven't talked about for a long time, or they may even say something like, I've never told anybody this story before. I imagine you get that a lot when you're digging in like this. You get people going like, oh, I've never really talked about this before. And because they don't think how it's going to relate to what they're doing now. But what you just did was show us the absolute gold and glory of how all of your stories, all of your moments matter.
Right. And I think too, it's like, you could be telling something from childhood. You can be telling something from it. So it's like, it opens a world to you. I think though, sometimes, and this is why the process I went with you of asking you, like, what are those objections or what are those things? Because that's how you tailor it back down to know what stories to tell. Right. Because I joke, like, you don't want to be like the uncle at the table who's just telling random stories and everyone's like, please stop. This is so
Yes.
boring. We're always trying to think, okay, how is the reader going to, how is this story important to the reader? And then you can go even a step further, which is like going down the rabbit hole is, okay, is this story within my brand? Because there's other stories too that, I try and keep a light, fun. And so sometimes stories will come up and I'll be like, that just doesn't feel right for like, or maybe
Yeah.
it feels too exposed. And
Yeah.
so I think it's setting up some boundaries too. So you know how to use the stories.
Mm. What ultimately happens when you work with somebody and you help them do what you just did with me, and on a larger scale and a wider scale, and they see more success in their business, they see more sales, they get more clients, they do all those things, more brand awareness. Then what kind of impact are you here to make with those people? What do you love to see?
Well, I mean, I don't, on a big scale, I think you're asking a big like why question. And
Yeah.
I think I'm just here to help people feel like they can, be comfortable in their own skin, understand how they can do so, and be able to support their families. Like when I started,
Hmm.
I didn't start this business because I thought, oh, I'm going to like become this big copywriter and really try and help and do all that. Was I wanted to make $500 extra a month for my family. Like
Yeah.
that was my goal. So I think I always go back to like, if I can help people, be able to do this business way in a way that doesn't feel quite so heavy, and be able to inject personal story and be able to make connections and sell in a way that doesn't feel, which I feel like this word's so overused, but not feel salesy, right? Like
Hmm.
if I can do that, then like mission accomplished. Like I'm just here to like help my clients, reach their goals in a way that feels good to them. And hopefully we can use our storytelling and copywriting abilities to do so.
So where does that, like, why does that matter for you? That's where I would go back to, like, that idea of, in a way that feels good for you. It's almost like there's this level of authenticity that's like really important of this. Is like you
Although
are
I hate that
important
word.
enough. Well, yeah, we've talked about this.
Yes.
So what, let me just ask that then, because I know that we use this a lot and it's used a lot. What kind of words would you use instead of authentic?
Well, I
You
think
know,
authentic's just been overly used, like be authentic. And then I think it also makes people feel like, oh my gosh, like now I have to be authentic, I have to like show everyone everything about my life. I'm not being authentic if I'm not, and I don't, I want to hang out with real people. And so I always go back to the word real, which is like,
cool.
you know, maybe it's the same word that I'm just trying to use a different way, but
Well, sure.
I'm always thinking of, I think authenticity, it almost feels unauthentic to say you're authentic, right? Like let's just be like our real selves. And I think this is too, is like so much of, I always think when I first learned email copywriting, and this isn't a new concept, but since I heard it first from my mentor, Chris Orzakowski, he always like talked about showing, not telling. And I think that's where, instead of telling people we're authentic, let's show them we're authentic by the content and the about what we put out into the world. And I think that's probably where I that's maybe why it maybe rubs me the wrong way, because people are saying be authentic, be your authentic self, and they're not telling people how to do this in a way that feels real and still feels good to the person who's actually putting out the business person, I should say.
Yeah, I love that. That's this is, I mean, this has honestly been part of the journey for me, is trying to teach what I do, I guess. And it, as you say, you're like, if you say you're authentic, doesn't that feel inauthentic? And it is a sense of like, no, I get it. The thing that has drawn people to me over the years is the fact that I show up fully. This is me. Like, I'm as real as it comes, I think. And there's something that's been attractive about that. And so then part of this is teaching others, how do you do this? Like, how do you show up like this? If it doesn't just come easily, naturally, if I follow in the footsteps of my mom and my dad who did this, who showed up in the same way, all the places that they went. And for me, I think just thinking about what you just said of, I could be out here saying like, just be authentic, just show up, just like I do. Come on, everybody. And you're sitting there going like, yeah, but like how? Like, I don't get it. And
Right.
so my effort then is to say the best way for you to be authentic is to embrace and grow empathy for your own story and truly see the journey that you've been on so that you can show up understanding what you've got through to get here and how amazingly important it is. And
I
that's going
love
to
that.
allow you to show up in a more real way.
Yep.
So for
I love
you, it's good. Thank you. For you, this idea of being real, then helping people show up in a real way, not authentic, but real. How do, how do, oh, where does that begin for you? Why does that matter? Like that's where I would say, let's go back in your story, back, before to where you start to see that in your life showing up, like as a kid, as a young teen, did it bother you when people were fake? Like what shows up for you around that idea of just be real, be who you are, kind of as an early age? Like where does that show up for you?
Gosh, I feel like now I feel like I need to be like laying back on like a couch for like the
Yeah,
psychology
there
of
we
all
go.
this, because
Yes, tell me
I
all
don't
your
know if I have
problems. Tell
I
you.
don't I don't know if I have like a great answer at the moment. I'll be honest with you. Like when did I decide I wanted to do? It's like I said, I
Well,
feel
that's
like I
no, that
felt
wasn't the question though. Hang on,
okay. What was
because
the
I
question?
want you to hear this, right? So
Okay.
so I'm thinking about this idea of being real.
Okay.
Where does go back to think about your child, think about early teen years, think about something way back then when no, way back then. Hold on. Okay, so back then that um this idea of authenticity, of being real, of not being fake, of hiding something. Is there a moment, is there a memory that shows up as you think about that concept? Don't think about like, when did this shift? When did I realize that? Just what,
Right.
think about those concepts, those ideas. Is there anything that shows up
I
around how
would
your friends
say
treated you or your parents or anything like that?
I think in general, probably the way I grew up, um, I grew up in a very conservative Christian household. So what
Mm-hmm.
comes to my mind too is I think sometimes I felt like I couldn't be,
Yep.
like I feel like there is this like kind of like weird part in my life because of the way we grew up based like on other kids who were just like, they didn't have to go to church 3 times a week or do all these other things. So I think that's probably where I think it would stick up is like, okay, because I think too, there I think at a young age, we don't feel like maybe all of our parts of our lives are accepted from others,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whether we chose that or were forced into it by the way that our parents raised us. So I think that would be probably where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
how can we be accepting of people? And I think in general, it's given me I'm very thankful because I think I have a very balanced view on people and how they go through their life because of it.
Kind of the like, everybody you see is going through something. So like have grace, have patience for that kind of an idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. 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 It is that's so interesting because the word, yeah, be real. You talk about kind of growing up in a Christian home and everything. And that's, so I was a pastor for a long time. And this idea um, of inauthenticity, uh, of hypocrisy is almost like a narrative that I know that a whole generation has towards, the church in some way and whatever, but it's sort of this idea of like, just be like, who you say you are is not who you act to be. And all these things show up, and whether it's leaders or anybody showing up in a way that doesn't feel like it's like they're putting on a show or something. And that can unfortunately be part of that narrative in that setting. And it's not to be assumed that like, oh, because you were in that's how you felt. But in your story, you're like, oh, that probably, yeah, I kind of saw a lot of hurt that was covered up, or I saw people acting one way and saying they act another way or something like that as you're growing up through those years.
Right.
That's what I heard.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then what do you, as you grow up and you get into this, like first career, like college, like where did you go? Where did you shift? Where did you work, and kind of what direction did you go?
Well, I got married when I was young. I got married, met my husband when I was 19, got married at 20. I
I was
worked
21 when I got
Okay.
married. So there we go.
Wow.
We're all right.
Then we're both, I always joke around like, wow, we're really both like, what do I want to say? Like I tell my husband, we're beating major odds at this point, right? Like we're
Seriously.
going on 24 years. So at least I think so. I'm at the age now I forget too. Like how old am I? So yeah, I think I worked at a bank. I was an assistant manager, and I think all these things like accumulation. So I'll go through fast
Yeah,
since
right.
I'm old, like the things. But I was an assistant manager for a bank. I was a teller. It was like my first job. When I had my son at 25, I pretty much I did a little bit of banking still, but I was a stay-at-home mom, and
Mhm.
I continue to be a stay-at-home mom. And then around when my daughter went to preschool, I started doing some like odd jobs, like some social media posting for people. I would do some like I did an email newsletter, but I did all these things for just like a little extra money,
Mhm.
or because I wanted to like trade for facials or something. Like it was not
Yeah.
it wasn't like a serious business. And then I had gotten a job with a website development company. It's not even a job. I was just kind of working on the side. And at the time, this company had slowed down. And I was like, I don't want to have to go like work at it like a real job. Like my main job has been to take care of my children, be there. So
Yeah.
I on a whim, at the same time, my friend was starting a business as an esthetician and was doing eyelashes. And
How
I
long ago was
wanted,
this now?
this was the about, well, I started my business, I think like April 2018 is when I consider my start date. So
Okay.
a little bit over 3 years ago. And I was like, I want eyelashes. And how about I do your social media for you? Because I had done some posting and this
Right.
and that. And she was like, okay, like I literally didn't even know this would be considered to be like a social media manager type job. Like I didn't even have a Facebook account at this point, or at least a real Facebook. I had like a fake one. So I had no social media. And I just knew, I just was like, I'll do this for you. Long story short, people started to like it. And I thought, well, I'll become a social media manager. Except I wasn't just a social media manager. I was taking on jobs where I was writing people's blogs. I was doing Pinterest. I actually think I was like on Twitter, which I had no business being on. Like I started doing all of like writing people's email newsletters. And I was making like $5 an hour. And decided that like this was I had no business. Like why did I start I was trying to make $500 a month, and all of a sudden I'm working like 60 hours a week
Well, why are
for
they
that.
like, why are people hiring you at this point? Like, is it all referrals? Is it
Yeah, I just
why are
kind
they
of threw
throwing
out
everything, their entire public profile at you?
because I just basically went on Facebook one day. I did take the time to create a website. I started couple of social media profiles, and I just put myself out there and said, hey, I'm going to do this for you guys, or I'm going to do social media management. Does anyone need help with any of this stuff? And I got clients right away just by kind of putting it out there, saying what
Yeah.
I was doing. And I
What do you think that they
literally,
liked about you, those first kind of clients?
well, I think I saw a need. So I filled an immediate need. And I
Mhm.
think because people knew me and my character, I'm assuming that they thought, okay, Brenna will do a decent job. And let's face it, they weren't paying me a lot of money. So even if
Right.
they hired me on a month-to-month contract, they're only losing like $200, right? So
Yeah.
at the time, like it wasn't like this huge investment. So I think it was just a mixture of, using my good name, if you will, and
Mhm.
going ahead and filling this need. And I had some experience. So it's not like I came in this like completely like where I had never ever done a social media post or never
Yeah.
written an email, but knowing what I know now, I had no idea what I was doing. So I really felt like I was led along a path, like to somehow be here. But what happened is being a social media manager, no, I decided I hated it. Like I hated like collecting pictures and
Right.
God bless the social media managers out there. Like it's not a job. Like my dream is to hire one, so I don't have to do it myself. It's a lot of thought. So and because I was doing this, I was marketing for myself too. I kept hearing like, I love your writing. I love like what you're doing. And so at that point, at the end of 2018, I decided that I needed to pivot, and I pivoted over to email copywriting. And that's kind of how I
Mhm.
got myself thrust into the copywriting world.
And so now, yeah, like people have an email list already and they hire you to come in and they just say, here, write my stuff.
Well, that's what I started off doing. There's many evolutions
Well,
of where I've been. So I started off doing in 2019 as an email copywriter, and yes, they would come in. I would, help write newsletters for them. But over time, like my copywriting evolved, and I started doing all different types of copywriting: sales pages, landing pages. I worked as a lead editor in my friend and mentor Marisa Corcoran's mastermind or group coaching program, I should say. And so like I kind of like I always joke around, like I went through like copy boot camp. Like I had experience doing these
mhm.
things, and it was funny too. I started to call myself an email copywriter, but people were coming to me for websites, for landing pages, for all these different things. So I've kind of have like swiveled, and even as of now, as I go into 2022, taking all of this, like all of like the story. I was actually fixing my website today. It's like taking the story, the strategy, and
Yeah.
being able to merge those things together and help people with their overall marketing strategy, and then helping them execute it with a good copy background that's backed by messaging and positioning. But at the core of it is that story part. And I
Yeah.
also am doing a lot of pre-launch copy where I'm helping people come in, and I do a lot of launch copy, but at the same point in time, I just decided I don't want to just like write people's launch copy. Like I want to develop that relationship before we get to the major sales period. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a focus of mine going into 2022.
It's, I've got a thought, but I got one more question. What, what do, how do people compliment you? How do your clients compliment you? Or like, how do they say thank you? What kind of things do they say about you?
Um, I would say that I think that they love the way my brain works.
Yeah.
They love like how I come up with these stories. I also think that um, one of my recent clients, which really helped me in this journey of kind of figuring out like the evolution of where I'm going, and is that she said that they brought me in to help with strategy and editing over the summer, and she was like that I can see the big picture, but then I can get down to the granular parts of it. So I can
Hmm.
come into a business and say, okay, you're here, you want to go there. That's great. Now let's create this marketing strategy, how we can get you there. And then let's get it down even further. How can we start using these fun stories, these fun different ways, and kind of
Yeah.
use that as our path to content to get people from point A to point B?
So this is what's amazing. And you said it again there. I love it. There's this word evolve or evolution has come up a bunch. And I see what you bring is it's just that. It's this ability, what you just said there about seeing the big picture. It's like you see the evolution. You see, and you think of literally look at evolution, that if you look at the whole, millions of years or however long you want to take a time span, and you can see this tadpole develop into a human or something like that. I don't know, whatever it is. And you can see the whole journey as Brenna, I feel like you see that whole evolution. You see that whole journey as you dig into somebody's story. Whereas they might be looking at it and they're so deep into it that all that they see is the frog, the what it is now. And it takes so long for that change to happen to become something else that they get discouraged, they get downtrodden, they think that I'm just talking about the frog. I'm just talking about the frog. And you're like, no, 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 no. You're talking about the whole thing. There's so much more to this journey. Is that aligned? Does that sound like
Yeah.
something? Is that real? Like that to me is like there's something you do there about evolution, and to look back at this whole story of like you're now helping people show up and be their real self, which includes this whole story. It comes from a place of you, again, whatever, however you grew up and however you evolved, it's like I'm just, there's almost this like going through the motions or like just taking it one step at a time. And now you're at this place where you're like, I'm putting it all together. I'm putting my entire life together, all the things that I've learned and experienced, all the personality that you have, and all the places and programs and things that you've learned. It's now all coming into this one package. And like, oh, how you have evolved to get to the place where you are, Brenna, to now where you get to help people who also maybe feel stuck in one place see their entire evolution and bring that forward to their audience to spark more sales.
Yeah.
It's an
I
incredible
think
story.
that's good. I feel like it was like a little windy, but I know that's what I always joke. Like, I'm in my mid 40s. It's a lot. If I was 27, this whole story thing would be easier, right? Because I do think it is. It's like
Well, sure, you just have more chapters.
yeah, exactly.
But I mean, Harry Potter's good. You know, the Philosopher's Stone, it's a good book. But the whole series is what makes it exceptional. And I think, yeah, sure, somebody, you know, who's 30, who's in book 5 of their life, wow, yeah, they've got a good series going on there. But add another 2 books to that and it becomes exceptional.
That's
You know
another
what I
email
mean?
for you, by the way.
Well, there I come back to Harry Potter too much, but I agree.
Yeah,
I
but
need to
then
record it. I need
people
to
know
listen to
you
this one
because of the
again.
Harry Potter, right?
That
So
might be check out my latest reels. There's but I think that's it. You're like, yeah, it can be windy and it can be, and there's people who come to me, you know, I've worked with 60+ year olds who are like, I've got a lot more story than you're used to. I'm like, yeah, but we can go in and we can look at all of this. But the point is, at some point you were something, you experienced a moment that shifted you to be who you are now, whether that moment was 30 years ago or 3 months ago. It's a significant moment that matters, and you get to fill in. All that matters is that you actually have more stories to tell than somebody who's 27. So you actually have a great advantage to pull
oh,
from
yeah.
all these moments to now bring that to someone. But the transformation is so simply the same from this to this through this, and that's
Exactly.
what you get to bring. So well done, you.
Thank you very much.
I love this. It is, again, once again, it is so easy to talk with you. This is, you know, when I asked what people compliment you on, I was expecting, it's just so easy to work with her. You
I
bring
do get
your,
a little bit of that as well.
yeah, because I
So
think that this is what I imagine this is what you just bring this real self. I'm just bringing who I am. And that is so easy to talk to work with, and to bounce back and forth. That's so magical. And so I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for, you know, as I just described the story anyways, from going from like, I don't know, let's say stuck to evolving, and you're helping people do the same who feel like they might be stuck, to recognize that not only their business is evolving, but they have a much bigger story to tell throughout this. And if somebody wants help through this, like I just got free help from you. But if somebody wants to pay you to take them through this journey and to elevate their business, then what's the best way for them to contact you and to get that conversation started?
well, I'm always on Instagram more than I should be. Hopefully I'll hit my goal of like 30 minutes a day. But for now, you can always hit me up on Instagram. That's probably the best way for immediate access. And then they can always, and I'm at Brenna McGowan Co. And then you can always get a hold of me through my website, which is also brennamcgowan.co. So
Fantastic. And what are you working on now? Like is there like a program? Is there something that you're doing or something, anything
moving
that we
in
can look for?
2022, I'm helping people in 2 different capacities. So I'm helping, I am taking on probably some like bigger copywriting projects, but in general, I'm going to have my focus on 2 areas, which is first, helping people come up with pre-launch. I have a whole pre-launch plan that I walk people through that helps people sell out their offers, but in a way that doesn't feel so rushed. I've noticed a lot, especially in like our evolving world, we'll use that word again, is that, you know, it's hard for people to make a buying decision very quickly, especially a large one. And one of the areas that people don't focus enough on is the pre-launch period. In the pre-launch period, like once you get to sales, yeah, you might have a little bit of story, but your sales emails, your sales stuff is pretty straightforward. And so it's like, I love coming in and being able to do what I did with you, with my clients, and kind of like doing this matching thing of how can we use your content, your podcast, your whatever it is, your live videos, your emails, your social media posts, and how can we create content that gets people really excited to buy your offer when your doors open, if not also pre-sale. So I have a whole pre-launch plan that I'm working through with clients. I just did one with a friend and client, and we just had amazing results on her launch. So really exciting, and I love that work.
I
And
think I
then
saw
the
you
other,
share that, actually share those results. That was a
yes,
public thing, right? Yeah. Oh
yeah, I
man.
shared
Yeah.
the results yesterday.
Massive
She
numbers.
had a almost $70,000 launch. For it wasn't the first time she's ever launched this particular program, and
Brilliant.
she also had gotten some one-on-one work. Although I always go back and say with a caveat when I throw out big numbers like this, I'm not a magic. My friend Deep Shika calls it the magic bean. I'm not the magic bean. Like there's a lot that goes into a launch. So, but definitely having a pre-launch can really help with people with their, and not only does it help with people with selling out your offers, it really helps you get your messaging and your positioning down well ahead of your launch. So you go into your launch feeling vetted, knowing that you're speaking the right language, if you will, to your people. And then the second way that I'm helping people is that I'm doing something called fractional CMO, where I'm helping businesses on a monthly basis, where they're paying me to come in and take all of my writing genius and match it to marketing strategy and helping them execute that on a month-to-month basis.
Brilliant. I love it. To have you in like the back pocket would be phenomenal. Just always there, like, hey, can I
Yeah.
can I ask you about this?
You
What
have
do you think about this?
Voxer access to me all month long, where I love
Goodness.
to chat on Voxer too. That's
I
it's a little bit of a problem. So that's something that these clients get, is they get access to me to be able to ask these questions, or if they're feeling stumped, and have me come in and help them.
Amazing. Well, this this coming out at the beginning of 2022 here, I think people are going to be contacting you for sure and looking out for that. And I am just so grateful for you, for the way that you respond to my challenges, my questions for you, and we create just great conversation. Obviously, we are aligned in how we think about this and see story as such a valuable part of business and marketing and connecting with people in general. And I'm just so grateful that that I've got you here and for what you brought to my audience today. Thank you, Brenna.
Thank you.